Good, I'm Ryan, and here I have Old Man Nevin. We're here with Back in the Day Friday. Let's take a look in the mailbag.
All right.
What is a Commodore 64 by Anonymous?
Anonymous, huh? Hey, you got to sign your letter. Come on, don't be shy. Sign your letter. We want to know who you're talking about here. What is it, Driggsy?
The Commodores. They sang that song Brick House, didn't they?
Driggsy, not the Commodores. Commodore 64. Yeah, the Commodore sang Brick House, but this is a different thing. The Commodore 64, they're talking about the old computer. Commodore 64 was an old computer, one of the early versions of the computers, came out in 1982 by the Commodore International Company. It was actually the best-selling computer of all time. Sold 17 million copies. That's more than any single computer system has ever sold. A little bit, priced a little bit more cheaply than like the Apple and the IBM products, and so it was real popular. It cost about $595, which a good chunk of money that day. Had 64 kilobytes of RAM, 64 whole kilobytes of RAM. So you can imagine, how it was flying with speed. But that's the Commodore 64, one of the early versions the home computer.
Alright, so I understand a little bit about it now. What do we have for an artifact today?
Alright, today's Back in the Day artifact is something that's really pretty cool here.
That's a Commodore 64.
Driggsy, it's not a Commodore 64. Just because we just read something about a Commodore 64 doesn't mean this. You just pulled that out. You just pulled that out because I just talked about it. Do you know anything about things back in the day?
I guess
How long
not.
have you been on this show? No, this is actually Tascam Portastudio, Tascam 404 Portastudio. It's a 4-track recorder. A 4-track recorder. So the way it works here is when we turn it on, this is made to do home recording, and so it's 4 tracks, meaning you can record 4 separate tracks and then mix them. They don't record over the other tracks. They're all stored separately, so you can turn one down, you can turn one up. So what you do, you press play here, and then you've got your controls. You can turn each one of them on. So maybe you put your drums here, you put your guitar on the next track, you put your vocals on the track after that, the bass, and you can mix them all up. You can change the levels, you can add some effects, you can change the EQ, that kind of thing. And so these devices, they really brought the recording studio into somebody's home. So how this all got started was back in the 1940s, this company called Ampex built the first 8-track system. And so the 8-track system, it worked with the concept that the playhead and the recording head were on different tracks. So you could play one track, record on another track without erasing it. And so that was a brand new concept. Now you can add a new track to the same tape without erasing one of them and build on that. The first one was 7 feet tall, 250 pounds.
That's as big as Andre the Giant.
No, it's not as big as Andre the Giant. Have you seen Andre the Giant?
I've seen it.
Did you ever stand next to Andre the Giant?
No.
No, of course you didn't, because you weren't around back in the day. Andre the Giant was much, much bigger than the Ampex recorder. It was a little more Shaq size, a little bit smaller than Shaq. So anyway, the first one was sold to this guy named Les Paul. Now some of you guys that are guitar players, you might have heard of the Les Paul, famous guitar model. If anybody out there wants to donate a few $1,000s, we'll do a Les Paul segment here on Back in the Day Friday. But Les Paul, he's famous for the guitar, but he was also a visionary in the early recording process. He actually got the very first Ampex 8-track and started with this multi-track recording, and he basically invented, the pioneer of 4-track multi-track recording. Then it becomes popular in music studios in the 50s and into the 60s. George Martin with the Beatles was a real pioneer in this. They recorded the entire Sgt. Pepper's album. You ever heard of Sgt. Pepper's?
Sgt. Pepper. Yeah. The Civil War hero, right?
Drixie, what am I gonna do with you? The Civil War hero, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
You're stuck
One
in
of the
back in the
greatest,
day.
yeah, one of the greatest albums, and you need to learn a little bit about back in the day. One of the greatest albums of all time. They did the whole thing on 4-track material, but those songs, they had a lot more than 4 different tracks. They would add layers and layers, all kinds of different instruments, all kinds of different sound effects. So what they would do, since they only had 4 tracks there, you record the first 3, and then you take the tracks on 1, 2, and 3, and record them all to number 4. Now you've got 3 more blank tracks that you can record new instruments on, new segments on. Then you can bounce that down. In America, we call that bouncing down. The Brits, like the Beatles, George Martin, they called it a reduction mix. But by bouncing those tracks to the 4th track and then freeing up more, they can put layer and layer on top of it. So you can have 3 different guitar parts. You can have multiple vocal parts. You can add all kinds of different sound effects, like they did on Sgt. Pepper's, and really make an incredible piece of music with just 4 tracks. Eventually, the 8 tracks started coming in the studios, and the 16 tracks. And now it's gone digital, of course, but this is how it all started out. Bruce Springsteen's album, Nebraska, whole thing recorded on a home 4-track player like this. He did the whole album in his house. As these started to be modeled by companies like Tascam, they started to make models that people could use in their homes. And you know, even today, maybe you're not into the rock and roll anymore. Maybe you're into the hip hop. Well, you put your drum track on one of them. Then you record, you know, your raps, your vocals on another one. Maybe you got a backup singer. You put those on the 3rd track, and then you want to sample something, right? You put it on the 4th track. These days, of course, you've got it digital, which means you can add as many tracks as you can. These days, people do it, you know, online software programs, digital ones in professional recording studios, and you've got an unlimited amount of tracks. But it all started out with things like this, and the Tascam Portastudio 414.
That is crazy back in the day, old man Nevitt.
All right, thanks for joining us this week on Back in the Day Friday. We're going to dedicate this episode to the memory of the great George Martin, the Beatles producer. He had nothing to do with the Civil War, but he did produce Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album. We dedicate it to his memory. He passed away this week. And send in your letters. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Back in the Day.
Let's go back, let's go way on, way back when. I didn't even know you, you couldn't have been too much more than 10. Just get back, get back to where you once belonged. Get back.
Miss Sims, the STAR test is coming up and I don't know what to do.
Eliza, it's going to be okay. On March 29th, 7th and 8th grader testing, and then on March 30th, only 8th grade is testing. But I'm going to give you everything you need to know so that everything is going to be all right. You need to bring a sack lunch, you need to bring some pencils, you need to get a good night's sleep, and you need to eat a good breakfast. After spring break, I'm going to post posters that are going to tell you where your testing center is and what you're going to be doing during the test and after. So you have nothing to worry about. Lunch, sleep, pencils, breakfast. Then you're good to go. Feel better?
Yeah, I mean, that's not hard.
Not at all. Good luck.
Thanks.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm